this story is a straight-up dumpster fire, and I'm still trying to process how my life turned into the plot of a bad soap opera. I thought I'd seen it all, until my sister Chloe stood in front of our entire family, announced she was pregnant with my ex's baby, and then had the audacity to ask me to bail her out of 100 calo in debt after her husband walked out. Like, what kind of alternate reality am I living in? For some background, I have a, let's call it, complicated relationship with my younger sister Chloe, 29F. Chloe has always been the golden child. You know the type. Everything she does is amazing, no matter how messy or irresponsible. Meanwhile, I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who always picks up the pieces when Chloe inevitably screws things up. Now let's rewind to about a year ago. Chloe calls me one evening, absolutely buzzing with excitement. "Guess what?" she says, practically squealing through the phone. "Mike proposed. I congratulated her because, well, that's what you're supposed to do, right?" But deep down, I wasn't thrilled. Mike, her now ex-husband, always gave me bad vibes. He's one of those guys who oozes entitlement like the world owes him something just for existing. But whatever, it wasn't my relationship, so I kept my mouth shut. A few weeks later, Chloe drops another bombshell. She wants a dream wedding. Not just any wedding, a 6-figure extravaganza. I'm talking rented estate, designer gown, live band, fireworks, the whole 9 yards. I was stunned. I mean, who even does that? But Chloe was adamant. "It's my one big day," she said, as if that justified blowing through an amount of money that most people don't even see in a lifetime. Here's where things get dicey. Chloe and Mike couldn't afford this dream wedding. On their own, obviously. So she came to me. Not to ask for help, mind you, but to demand it. She wanted me to co-sign a 100-colo loan so she could live out her Pinterest fantasy. At first I said no. Hard no. I told her, "Chloe, this is insane. A wedding doesn't need to cost 6 figures. You can have a beautiful day without putting yourself in that kind of debt." But she wouldn't let it go. She cried. She begged. She pulled every guilt trip in the book. "You're my sister. You make good money. Don't you want me to be happy?" And then my parents jumped in too. "Oh, sweetie," my mom said, "think of how much this means to her. You've always been so responsible. Can't you just help her out this one time? You'll be making her dreams come true." Making her dreams come true. Right, what about my dreams, huh? Like the dream of not being dragged into Chloe's mess for the millionth time? But of course, I caved. I told myself it was just a signature, just a piece of paper. Surely Chloe and Mike could handle paying it off, right? Spoiler alert, they couldn't. Fast forward to the wedding. Let me paint you a picture. It was the most over-the-top, ridiculous event I've ever been to. The ceremony was held at some sprawling estate in the countryside, complete with a fountain, floral archways and doves. Yes, actual doves. Chloe walked down the aisle in a designer gown that probably cost more than my car. There was a live band, a 5-course meal and a fireworks display at the end of the night. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at a table sipping my overpriced champagne, thinking, this is what 100K looks like, huh? The whole thing felt so excessive, so unnecessary, but everyone else was eating it up. And then I saw him. Jake, my ex, sitting a few tables away, looking completely out of place. My stomach flipped. We hadn't spoken in years. He wasn't even from this part of the country anymore. So what the hell was he doing here? I tried to play it cool, but my mind was racing. Did Chloe invite him? Was this some kind of cruel joke? I didn't say anything that night. I figured Chloe probably invited him out of spite or to stir the pot, but whatever. I wasn't going to let her ruin my night. The wedding ended, life went on, and I tried to forget about the whole thing. That is, until a few months later. We're having a family dinner at my parents' house, just the usual Sunday night thing. Everything seems normal at first. We're eating, chatting, catching up. And then Chloe stands up, clinking her glass like she's about to make a toast. "I have some exciting news," she says, beaming from ear to ear. Everyone's staring at her, waiting for the big reveal. She takes a deep breath and says, "I'm pregnant." Cue the cheers, the congratulations, the hugs. My parents were practically in tears, and even I managed a polite, "Congrats." But then Chloe kept going. "And there's something else," she said, her voice getting all wobbly. I could feel my stomach tightening. Something wasn't right. "The father," she said, "is Jake. Y'all. I thought I was going to choke on my wine. The table went dead silent. My mom dropped her fork. My dad just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. And me? I was frozen. I couldn't believe what I just heard. I finally found my voice and said, "Are you serious? You slept with Jake? While you were engaged to Mike?" Chloe looked at me with these big, fake, innocent eyes and said, "It wasn't like that. Mike was being so distant and I was feeling so alone. Jake was just there for me. There for you." What does that even mean? I lost it. I yelled, "You mean to tell me that while I was signing my name on a $100K loan for your dream wedding, you were sneaking around with my ex? Are you out of your mind?" Chloe started crying, playing the victim as usual. I didn't mean for it to happen. Mike wasn't emotionally available, and I didn't know what to do. At this point, I was shaking. My parents were frantically trying to calm everyone down, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook. I said, "Do you even hear yourself? You made your bed, Chloe. Don't expect me to clean up your mess." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the baby. This was about the loan. The $100K loan that Chloe and Mike were supposed to pay off together. I sat back in my chair staring at her and said, "You're going to ask me to cover the debt now, aren't you?" Chloe didn't say anything, but the look on her face said it all. So, there I am, sitting at the dinner table, staring at Chloe, who's looking at me like I'm supposed to just nod and say, "Sure, I'll clean up this mess you made." My parents, of course, are still in shock from the whole "I'm pregnant with Jake's baby" bombshell, but they start recovering just in time to do what they always do, enable Chloe. My mom was the first to speak, and of course, it was to defend her precious golden child. "Sweetheart," she said, turning to me, "you don't have to be so harsh. Chloe's going through a lot right now." "A lot? A lot?" I almost laughed. I said, "Oh, she's going through a lot. She's the one who cheated on her husband, slept with my ex, and now wants me to bail her out of $100,000 worth of debt. But sure, let's talk about how hard this is for her." Chloe, who'd been sitting there quietly sniffling like the victim she loves to pretend she is, finally piped up. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought Mike and I were going to work things out, but when he found out about the baby, he left." Cue the crocodile tears. My dad, who usually stays out of the drama, decided to chime in. "Well, we can't let Chloe go through this alone," he said, looking at me pointedly. "She needs her family right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, "Let me get this straight. Chloe blew through $100 on a wedding she clearly didn't even take seriously, had an affair with my ex, and now, because her husband walked out, you think it's my responsibility to step in and fix it? Are you all hearing yourselves?" At this point, my mom turned full guilt trip mode. "You've always been so good with money," she said. "You've got a stable job, a nice apartment. You're in a position to help." Oh, and here comes the cherry on top. Chloe wiped her tears and looked at me with those big pleading eyes. "Please, sis," she said. "I'm drowning. I can't do this on my own. I don't have anyone else to turn to." I was absolutely fuming. "What about Jake?" I asked. "Since he's the father of this miracle baby, why don't you go cry to him?" And then Chloe drops another bomb. "Jake said he's not ready to be a dad." Oh, of course, he's not ready to be a dad. This man wasn't even ready to be a decent boyfriend when I dated him, so why am I not surprised? But I wasn't about to let her use that as an excuse. I said, "That sounds like a you problem, Chloe, not a me problem. But apparently in my family's eyes, everything is a me problem. My mom and dad both started piling on about how family supports family and we can't just let Chloe sink. At that point, I'd had enough. I stood up and said, "No, I'm not paying off her debt. I'm not helping her. Chloe made her choices, and now she has to live with them. Don't call me about this again." I grabbed my coat and left, slamming the door behind me. But of course, it didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, Chloe and my parents launched a full-blown guilt trip campaign. I was getting texts and calls every day. My mom was sending me long, emotional voicemails about how this is what family does and how I was being cold and heartless. Chloe sent me pictures of her ultrasound like that was going to magically change my mind. The kicker? My dad actually showed up at my apartment one night with a folder of financial documents. He sat me down and tried to reason with me, saying, If we all chip in, it won't be so bad. Your mom and I can cover part of it and you can take the rest. Chloe needs us right now." I just stared at him, completely dumbfounded. I said, "Do you even hear yourself? Chloe doesn't need us. She needs to grow up and take responsibility for her actions. I'm not her safety net." He got all huffy and said, "Well, I hope you don't regret turning your back on your sister when she needed you most." Oh, I don't regret it. Not one bit. But here's where it gets really wild. About a month later, I started hearing rumors from mutual friends that Chloe wasn't just asking me for money, she was asking everyone. Friends, extended family, even random acquaintances. She was spinning this sob story about how her cruel sister abandoned her and left her pregnant and alone. One of my cousins called me up and said, "Hey, just so you know, Chloe asked me for $5 last week. She said it was to cover medical bills, but something didn't feel right." I wasn't even surprised at this point. I told my cousin, "Don't give her a dime. She's not using that money for medical bills. She's using it to cover the debt from her ridiculous wedding." Eventually, Chloe's pity party ran out of steam. People started catching on to her lies, and the money stopped rolling in. Last I heard, she moved back in with my parents and has been begging them to take out a second mortgage to help her. I blocked her number, blocked my parents, and have been focusing on my own life. Do I feel bad? Honestly, no. Chloe has been enabled her entire life, and it's about time she faced the consequences of her actions. So Reddit, what do you think? Am I the bad guy for refusing to pay off her debt, or was I right to finally stand up for myself? Because let me tell you, I've never felt more relieved to be free of this mess. TLDR, my sister borrowed $100 for her dream wedding, announced she was pregnant with my ex's baby, and then demanded I pay off her debt after her husband left her. I said no, and now my family thinks I'm the villain.